town I'm from, and you go outside of the town a little ways, there's a small cemetery that's very, very old. And it's where my grandparents are buried. And I remember going there growing up over the years and walking around that cemetery and looking at tombstones that are well over 100 years old. And there's something about these old tombstones that are almost captivating. And you wonder, who were these people? What did they do? What was their life like? Their life in Mount Pleasant was probably similar 100 years ago, to be honest, than it is today. But all these things you think about when you look at tombstones, and this is something I say a lot at memorial services, but when you look at any tombstone, there's three things that are common, right? There's two dates and a dash. Two dates and a dash. And if you're here today, you have one date. That's the date you were born, right? And someday, unless Jesus returns, we'll have a second date. Every tombstone also has a dash. And those dashes are just little lines that connect the dates, and they all look the same. But in reality, those dashes represent the totality of someone's life. Those dashes are the legacy that somebody left behind. They're how they acted, how they treated people, who they were as a person is represented in that little dash. And if you're here today, you're still working on your dash. We have opportunity today and through our life to work on our dash, no matter who you are or how old you are. If you're here, you've got work to do on that dash. And as Christians, what we should be doing is thinking about how is our dash continuing to be formed like Christ as Christians, Christ-likeness. How are we expanding the kingdom of God in the world? How are we being lights in the community and to others? And how are we leaving a legacy behind that dash is going to represent something important and unique, right? That dash is something that we're leaving behind. How we live life matters. And even as we celebrate Memorial Day tomorrow, we think about the soldiers and the veterans that have gone before us and how that's part of their legacy, a part of their dashes. And we all have things that are a part of our dashes. As we've been journeying around these churches, these 7 churches that John's writing to in Revelation 2 and 3, we've been learning lessons that John and that Jesus directly is teaching these churches about how to live life, how to improve their dashes. And they've been learning that things that they're doing well and things that they need to improve on. And as individuals and as a church, we should be looking at these lessons like a mirror and thinking, what do I need to do better? Or what am I doing well, right? I'm doing this really well, that's great, let me continue to grow in that. Or where do I need to improve and do different? These are good lessons for all of us to learn and to think about. These lessons are really life lessons on how to improve our dashes as we continue on the journey of life together. Today we find ourselves in Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love. This isn't Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, right? If you've never been there, though, you should go to Pennsylvania, Philadelphia. You can stand at Benjamin Franklin's house. If you've never been there, it's really cool. My wife's a big fan of Benjamin Franklin, and you can see his printing press and stuff like that. But this is the original Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love. But the Christians living in Philadelphia were not experiencing brotherly love. It was just the opposite. Actually, this church and its message is very similar to our second church, Smyrna. So if you remember our second week, we had Smyrna, the second church. So the second church and the second to last church in this group of 7 is very similar. So they're Christians. So they come from there's a large Jewish population here in Philadelphia, and as these Jews accepted Jesus as their Messiah, they're being kicked out of the synagogue. The doors of the synagogue are closed to them, and so the protection that is there is closed to them, and now they're experiencing suffering, pain, and loss, and rejection. And so they're not experiencing brotherly love. It's like the church in Smyrna. So if you're here today and you've ever experienced hardship or life can be difficult sometimes, and you're or even if you want to be ready to go through times in life that's difficult, then today we're going to learn the message in Philadelphia is lessons for us. How do you get through times in life that's difficult? How do you prepare yourself when life is hard? And how do we do that well, and even in the difficult times, make that dash of our lives really stand out as something that shines as a part of who we are in our lives? So as we follow along here, this is the message to the church in Philadelphia. It says, "And to the angel of the church in Philadelphia write, the words of the Holy One, the true One, who has the key of David, who opens and no one will shut, who shuts and no one opens. I know your works. Behold, I have set before you an open door, which no one is able to shut. I know that you have but little power, and yet you have kept my word and have not denied my name. Behold, I will make those of the synagogue of Satan who say they are Jews and are not, but lie. Behold, I will make them come and bow down before your feet, and they will learn that I have loved you, because you have kept my word about patient endurance. I will keep you from the hour of trial that is coming on the whole world, to try those who dwell on the earth. I am coming soon. Hold fast what you have, so that no one may seize your crown. The one who conquers, I will make him a pillar in the temple of my God. Never shall he go out of it. And I will write on him the name of my God and the name of the city of my God, the new Jerusalem, which comes down from my God out of heaven, and my own new name. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches." So as you recall, each of these 7 letters start with a title of Jesus. It's a title that Jesus is directly giving to the church that relates to the message and the situation they're going through. And it's a title that he wants us to know about who he is, about his character, something comforting and reassuring. And here it says, "And to the angel of the church of Philadelphia write the words of the Holy One, the true One, who has the key of David and opens and no one will shut, and who shuts and no one will open." There's 3 things here that are important for us to know, that Jesus wants us to know, especially when we're going through difficult times. This isn't in your notes, but you can write it down. The first one is this: the Holy One it's the most used title for God in the Old Testament. The most used title for God in the Old Testament. So what Jesus is reassuring them is that he is God. He's defined, and we've seen this before in the Christ titles, but he wants the church, especially those times that are difficult, to know that he is God. And that no matter what's happening in life, in our own lives or in the world, that he is ultimately over everything. He has ultimate authority, and he's in control. And the world can seem rough and disjointed, and things can seem like it's going in directions we don't understand, but Jesus is over it all. And there will be a time that he comes back and he brings it all in order, and justice will prevail. So we have to remember that. The second thing he says, he's the true one. He's the true one. So for this church who's going through a difficult time, who's being kicked out of the synagogue and experiencing loss, he wants them to remember that he is the truth. He is the truth. And no matter what they're losing or experiencing, they're in the right camp. They're in the right camp that he is the true one. It's not the Jewish community. It's not the Roman government that's true. It's Jesus. He's the way, the truth, and the life. And we need to remember that, no matter what's happening in our own lives, that we're aligned with the truth of reality in Jesus. It says he has the key to the kingdom, the key of David. So in ancient days, if you were a king, you'd have what's called a keeper of the palace. And it's somebody who would have a really big key, because they had really big doors, right? So they had a really big key. One person had a really big key, and it could open the really big door that would let you into the palace. That was the keeper of the palace. So what Jesus is saying, that he is the keeper of the key for the kingdom of David, the everlasting kingdom that God promised through David, that Jesus is the king of. And what he's saying is, even though they've been kicked out and the doors of the synagogue are closed to them, his kingdom is open. His door is always open for you, no matter what you're going through in life, no matter who's rejected you or where you've been kicked out of or what you're losing. Jesus' kingdom is open because he's the one that holds the key. And he has the door open for us, and it's available for us all the time. So Jesus is God, and he's over everything and has authority. He's the truth, so we can rely on that and lean on that no matter what's happening, we're in the right camp, and that no matter what else is going on or what we're losing in life, his door is open to us, and that should be reassuring, especially in times of difficulty. The next section in every letter, if you remember, is a commendation. What is the church doing well? This is 8 through 10. It says, I know your works. Behold, I have set before you an open door, which no one is able to shut. I know that you have but little power, and yet you have kept my word and have not denied my name. Behold, I will make those of the synagogue of Satan who say they are Jews and are not, but lie. Behold, I will make them come and bow down before your feet. And they will learn that I have loved you, because you have kept my word about patient endurance. I will keep you from the hour of trial that is coming on the whole earth, to try those who dwell on the earth. What Jesus is saying to them is that, from a human perspective, a world perspective, they have little power. They've lost relationships, they've lost friends, they've lost their place in the synagogue, and they're experiencing loss. They have little power. But what he's saying is that there's a reversal in the kingdom of God. It's different than what the world sees as important. And we need to understand that when we are participants of the kingdom of God, what we view as important, how we view reality, needs to be different than how the world views reality. He says, you don't have any power, but you have me, and there'll be a time that those who are persecuting you and hurting you now, the rules will be reversed and justice will come. But as we live now on earth, we really need to train our minds to understand that Jesus' kingdom and us as participants of it is different. We should be living and experiencing life differently than the world. This is why Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount begins with characteristics of his kingdom participants. These are the first words of the Sermon on the Mount. He says, seeing the crowds, he went up on the mountain, and when he sat down, his disciples came to him, and he opened his mouth, and he said to them, saying, Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And then blessed are you when others revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven. For so they persecuted the prophets who were before you. These are the characteristics that Jesus is saying. If you're in his kingdom, this is how you should be, how you should think, and how you should see reality. It's hard because we live in a world, we live here, right? And the world is different. The priorities of the world are different. Humility and meekness and pure in heart aren't things necessarily that the world says, those are things that are important. We tend to look at things like power and authority and resources. We focus so much on those things, but Jesus wants us to focus on his kingdom because he knows where we focus is what we draw to. And he wants us to focus on patient endurance through life and difficult times. So then in each of these messages, the pattern goes compliment, complaint. What are they doing that he needs to correct them for? And for this church, there is none. There is none. Just like the church in Smyrna, there's no complaint. Again, I'll just repeat the feedback pattern of these messages, and this is good feedback pattern for us if you want to write it down. At the beginning of every message, there's a title of Jesus. Again, something intimate he wants the church to know about him that's reassuring. So that's good for us to know when you want to give someone feedback. Like start with, hey, Paul, you know I love you, right? So if I ever come to you and say that, you know that's put your seatbelt on, right? Hey, Paul, you know I love you. The second one is there's a compliment. Hey, this is what you're doing really well. Your jokes are on point, Paul, right? They're like love that. You make the whole place laugh. There's a compliment. Here's what you're doing well. Keep doing that. Then there's a correction. Here's something that you need to change. And there's one, right? One thing, not a handful, just one. Here's one thing to do differently. And here's how. That's always helpful. And then here's a negative consequence if you don't change and a positive consequence if you do. That's a really good, just general pattern of feedback that we can all learn. So when that pattern breaks in these messages, it's significant. So in Smyrna, which is the second church, and here in Philadelphia, the second to last one, there's no complaint. Because in times that are difficult, in times that are hard and challenging times, sometimes all we need is encouragement. Sometimes all we need is love, and sometimes this is a message that we all need to really hear and understand, that there are times in life that you just need to be there for someone. Maybe not say anything at all, maybe just give them love, presence, encouragement. It's important. It's important to see just not even just the words themselves, but the message that we're gaining from just the pattern of these messages here. It's important. So there are times that when people are hurting, maybe just encouragement is needed. On the flip side, last week we looked at Thyatira, and if you remember, Jesus says, you think you're alive, but you're actually dead. And he doesn't give them a compliment, he just gives them correction. Right? So there are also times, which are more rare maybe, that we just need like a little reality check, right? Like this may not be a time to coddle you. I just need to kick you in the butt a little bit and tell you something that you need to do differently. It's called have you ever had a reality check in your life? A time that someone's like, hey, you're a little off course here and you need to shift. I had that pretty recently last year. I accidentally went through a red light. You guys ever do that? Like it was close, but it was one of the ones when the lights get you. I don't know if you've ever experienced that, but as soon as the light goes off, you're like, oh man. You just know, should I tell my wife when I get home or wait for the thing to come in the mail, right? Like it's a real challenge. So anyway, you're gonna go to a class, pay a fee, go to a class, because a red light's different than a speeding ticket. And I'm in the class, and there's me and a couple other red light runners, so now we're categorized, right? And then there's like a bunch of people with DUIs. And the teacher of the class was really rough, like militant. And she said she wanted to really scare us all and give us a really hard, challenging day and really make us not want to come back to her class, right? Like her goal is to teach us all these things that we need to learn, but also instill in us a reality check so that we don't repeat the same things that we repeated before. But what she said was so insightful, and I'll never forget it. She said, what will happen is, for many of you in the room, once the kind of shock wears off that you've wasted a Friday here and you've paid your fees, and maybe for the DUIs, like the time you couldn't drive, and all that stuff kind of wears away, you're going to go right back to your old patterns. And I'm going to find you here in class again. Right? And she's like, my goal today is to get you not to come back, right? To do whatever I can to give you that reality check to not come back. That's the one thing that really stood out to me. Sometimes we just need that reality check to not come back or not go back into patterns that are unhealthy or things that we shouldn't be doing in life. So sometimes that's necessary, but in general, that general feedback pattern is really, really good. Then he goes on to their encouragement. He says, I'm coming soon. Hold fast what you have, so that no one may seize your crown. The crown is a victor's crown that you would get in like a race, like a Olympic race, a crown of wreath, like a wreath crown, a victor's crown. Those who conquer, I will make him a pillar in the temple of my God. Never shall he go out of it, and I will write on him the name of my God and the name of the city of my God, the new Jerusalem, which comes down from my God out of heaven in my own new name. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. So what is he talking about? Permanence. So this is a church who's lost. They've lost friends and friendships and their place kind of in society, and they're being persecuted. And so all these symbolisms that he's talking about is about permanence. You belong here. You belong here. And you're going to stick here with me. My door's open, and I'm going to put you your pillar here and your name here, and you're part of my kingdom. And that's reassuring, especially to us when we experience hard times and loss in life. So if you're here today and you want the keys to patient endurance, because this is kind of the key to of their complement, what they're doing well. There's 3 things in your notes that you can take notes on. If you want to endure well in life, especially during difficult times, the first thing is this: focus on the right door. Focus on the right door. So again, for the Christians in Philadelphia, the synagogue doors were closed to them. And this meant loss of friends, loss of network, loss of relationships, loss of Friday morning pool games or card games every night, at Las Palmas. It meant loss of everything. It was a difficult time in their lives. And, and you don't want to undermine the difficulty. So Jesus acknowledges the struggle that they're going through, but he also wants them to know that his door is open, to make sure that they are focusing their attention on the right door. That even though this door is closed and you've lost these things, that you gotta, if you keep your eye on this door, my door, then things are a little easier. We got to have Jesus be the focus of the first focus of our life. We have so many doors we can look at, right, in life. We have friends, family, finances. See the F's? It took me a while to get that. But we have so many doors we can look at to focus on, to make them like the number one things in our life. But Jesus says, don't. Those are good things, but don't make them number one. Make me and my door number one. And if you do that, when you lose those things, it's not detrimental. It's still hard and challenging, but it's not detrimental to you. We have to see Jesus as the first focus in his door. And then our perspective changes, because what we focus on is what we are drawn to. And if we focus on Jesus' door, that's what we'll be drawn to in our whole life. Our hymn of preparation today was "It Is Well." It Is Well, which is an amazing song. And I don't know if you know the story. Some of you might know the story of where that song came from. But there was a successful lawyer and businessman named Horatio Spafford. And after the fire of Chicago, his wife and his 4 daughters took a boat over to Europe, and he was going to follow them shortly after. And on their way, another larger boat hit their boat, and their boat sank. And all 4 of his daughters died. And his reflection and his grief and his mourning of his 4 daughters being killed in that accident, he wrote these words: "When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul." See, Horatio had his focus on the right door. His loss was tremendous, like I can't even imagine. But because his number one focus was the door that Jesus has open, that his king, who he belongs to, even though this loss was so hard, he can say, my soul's okay. It's challenging and difficult, but my soul's okay through this time. And he's an example for us to remember in this season. The second thing that we can do to help with patient endurance is to take small steps of obedience. Take small steps of obedience. I've said this before, but discipleship is nothing more than your next step of obedience. Discipleship is nothing more than your next step of obedience. And thinking for all of us, what's that next step? It could be as easy as doing something here, greeting, singing, helping with communion, praying, all kinds of things that we have here. Or it could be something outside of here in your families, with your friends, or whatever that is, volunteering somewhere else. What is your next step of obedience in your life? Sometimes we think too big with things, right? Like we can take small steps. If you make small changes or take small steps, you can quickly move to a new direction. But a lot of times we think too big, and we make big goals, and we end up failing or not doing those things the way we should. Here's the example: New Year's resolutions. How many of you have ever made a New Year's resolution? I think the success rate of New Year's resolutions is 0%, right? Because you're like, oh, I'm gonna lose 100 pounds this year, or I'm gonna do this crazy thing. We make these huge goals, and then once we don't do it for a little while, you're just like, oh, I might as well stop. Like maybe 1 year you're like, I'm going to read the Bible in a year, right? And if you've ever done that plan, it's a good plan. But if you miss like a day or two, making it up is daunting. And then you're like, well, forget it. I'll just start next year, right? Like, there's no way I'm going to make that up. And we quickly get off course. But if you just take small steps and say, in my life, what can I, instead of reading the whole Bible this year, what if I just read the Bible 5 minutes a day? Just pick it up and just read a verse or two every day. And then let that maybe turn into 10 minutes over time or 15 minutes over time. What if I say every morning when I get out of bed, I'll pray, right? And just do a little step of obedience. I'll give you a personal example for me. I had a doctor's appointment recently, and I had some blood work done, and shockingly, my cholesterol is a little bit high. And it could be the canes. I don't know. I'm not going to blame canes for it, but it could be too much fried food. But anyway, I said, okay, I'll do more cardio. So a couple weeks ago, I said, I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to jog 3 miles a day. And I hate running, right? But like my cholesterol needs to go down. So I go to the gym and I'm on the treadmill and half a mile goes by and I'm like, I'm done, right? It's like, I can't do it, right? So I'm like, I might as well just give up jogging altogether, right? This is not going to help. So instead of saying it, what if, like, I'm going to jog 3 miles, what if I said, hey, I'll jog a half a mile every day for 2 weeks, and then I'll bump it up to a mile, and then you like just slowly move it forward a little bit over time, and then maybe in a year and a half I'll get to 3 miles, right? But you make it a little adjustment will build the endurance that I need to last longer later. And that's what small steps of obedience do. Instead of making huge changes, make small adjustments. Spend time with Jesus every day, just a few minutes if you're not doing any, or make it a little bit more, or add one little thing to your life, and the trajectory will take you somewhere new. We got to take small steps of obedience. And the third thing that's important is you're going to make a good friend. You're going to make a good friend. This is really, really important. If you remember, we're in Philadelphia here, which is the city of brotherly love. And why it's called that is because of King Eumenes, which is here on the left, King Eumenes, and his brother Attalus II. King Eumenes II and his brother Attalus II. King Eumenes was the founder of Philadelphia, and him and his brother not only were brothers, but were best friends. And their friendship was legendary. It was legendary like David and Jonathan legendary, but they were real brothers and best friends. And there was a couple instances that stick out as important in their life. One was a time that Attalus was in the capital, and they were pressuring him to go back and take over the kingdom, and he wouldn't do it. He respected his brother and his position too much. Another time when his brother was out, there was a rumor that he was assassinated, so his brother stepped up and took over the kingdom. But then when his brother came back, he just gave it all back to him without any issue, right? So instances like that and others stand out as this relationship and closeness that they had with each other. This is real love and real friendship. And so when we think about all of these messages and the idea of having real friendship, do you have friends in your life that will give you real feedback? Do you have friends in your life that will challenge you when you need to be challenged, or know you so well that when you're struggling will just be there to encourage and love you? Do you have those kind of friends in your life? And maybe write down some names of people that you need to maybe reinforce the friendship with, or reconnect with, or who can you be that friend for those who are around you? It's important for us to have those kind of friendships in our life that we know can give us what these messages are all about. Good feedback when we need it, encouragement and love when necessary, maybe a reality check when needed, and people that we trust. So if you can't think of a name, maybe write down maybe a potential name, right? Who could be your good friend. But we got to make friends that can help us walk through life together. We tend to isolate ourselves, and when we do, that's dangerous. When we surround ourselves with good friends that can help carry us through difficult times, that's really important. So how we live life matters. And we're all here today, and we're working on our dashes. And we need to learn lessons from the past for our lives today. That's what these messages are all about. And we're being cheered on by those who have come before us. Jesus is cheering us on, saying, I know what you're going through, and my door's open for you, and I'm here for you. Keep your focus in the right spot, and it will be okay. There's justice coming down the road. The members of the church in Philadelphia are cheering for you. They know what you're going through when life is hard, and they're masters at persevering, and they're saying, we know that you can do it too. Horatio Spafford is cheering for you. He's been through horrific challenges, and he can pen those words, "It is well with my soul," and so he knows that you can do it too. And countless others before us are cheering us on. This is what the writer of Hebrews says in Hebrews 12:1. It says, "Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, looking to Jesus, the founder and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is seated at the right hand of the throne of God." So today and this week, we need to run with endurance. We need to look at the right door, make sure we're focused on Jesus. We need to maybe add little changes in our life that will change the trajectory and build strength for us over time so that when life is hard, we'll get through it well. And we need to have good friends, people that will walk life with you and be there for you through life together. Yesterday, we celebrated my parents' 50th wedding anniversary, which is quite an accomplishment. And we went to a restaurant, the whole family, and it was great. And my parents, for me, is an example of this. They're an example of just being married 50 years is a part of their dash. The work that takes, the endurance that takes, the love, the patience, all the example that they are for me, the unconditional love they've shown me and my sister over time, right? Their dash is something that I can look at just in their marriage and their life and say, that's something that I want to be and emulate in my life as well. So just a little shout out to my parents there for their 50th, but just one example of many of what it means to have a dash that matters and a legacy that we're all leaving behind of a life well lived. So let me pray. Dear Lord, thank you for today. Thank you for your door being open to us. That no matter what's happening in our lives, no matter what difficulties we find ourselves in, we can patiently endure because we're looking at you first, who is the author and perfecter of our faith. And during the challenging times, we don't want to undermine those, but we want to seek comfort and love, but we want to say it is okay, it's well with my soul. I just pray for all of us in here today as we're working on our dashes, as we're working on our legacy in our life, that you just continue to fill us with your spirit, you lead us through life, and you help us be people here at Las Palmas that are lights in the world. In Jesus' name, amen.